Hi, I'm Kimmy with On William Street, and we are here to help you become a more confident quilter, from the piecing to the quilting and everything in between. So this week we are back with a fun pre-cut jelly roll quilt pattern. So don't forget, all of the information we're going to talk about today can be found on our blog, so you'll find a link to that blog post in the description below. That'll take you over and show you the diagrams and go over the fabrics and the layout of the quilt and everything that you might want to see as you're putting this together. Also, while you're there, don't forget to check out our shop and find your next modern quilting project. So first, what we're going to need for this, the materials are really easy. We're going to need a jelly roll or a 2.5 inch strip pack. Depending on the fabric, the manufacturer is going to depend on what they call that. So you're going to need one, and we're going to need one that has 40 jelly roll strips in it. So make sure that you're getting a full jelly roll pack. Most of those full ones are going to have between 40 and 42, but that's how many of the print that we're going to need. We're also going to need a jelly roll of our background color, and these are going to be, we're only going to need 20 of those. So again, it's just the 2.5 inch strips, the width of fabric. The background we need 20, and then the print or the main fabric we're going to need 40. If you prefer to cut your background print, we'll have the amount that you need, the fabric amount that you need in the blog post if you want to go ahead and use yardage instead of buying a jelly roll for that. So it just depends on what your preference is. So let's go ahead and get started cutting our fabric. We're going to go ahead and start with the white strips. So like I said, these are the 2.5 inch strips. If you are going with yardage, you're going to want to cut those first. And then we're just going to lay them out. And we want each of these to be 20 inches. So we're going to be able to get 2 from each strip. Now I'm just going to go ahead and line them right on top of each other. You can do 3 or 4 depending on what you're comfortable with. Make sure that they are lined up nice and even along both the top and the bottom edges. Now I'm just going to go ahead and start by trimming off one side. Now take your ruler and we're just going to line it up so that it's right on the 20 inch. And I like to do it this way with the ruler pressing down on all the fabric that I am not cutting, because that is going to hold it in place a little bit better. And then just cut it so that it is right at the 20 inches. Now you're just going to go ahead and repeat that for all of the 20 strips. Then go ahead and grab your green or your print strips. And these ones we want to be 40 inches, so we are not going to cut off that folded side. We want to make sure that we're trimming from the selvage end. So I'm going to lay them out flat, and the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and trim 3 or 4 of them at a time. You don't need to do them individually. And I'm just going to line them up on top of each other, making sure that the tops and the bottoms are nice and straight. And then instead of trimming off one of the sides first before we measure, I'm just going to line up my ruler along that folded edge. So you want to make sure that they are even along that folded edge as well. And then we're just going to line the 20 inch up there, keep everything nice and square, and then just cut off the end. Now, when you open those out, you're going to have the 40 inches that we need for all of those strips. And then again, repeat with the rest of your strips. Now that we have all of our pieces cut, we're ready to go ahead and start putting the top together. And this is going to be a really fun and easy project, and we're going to be using a lot of strip piecing. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be lining up one of the background strips with one of my print or one of my colored strips, and then we're going to be sewing those together. And then I'm going to strip piece all of those in one big long line, which just means as soon as I'm done sewing this one, I'm not going to take it off the machine. I'm just going to start sewing the next one as well. We're chain piecing, not strip piecing. I think I said strip piecing. When I'm done piecing these strips, we're going to continue to chain piece the rest of them. And this is really nice because it saves on thread. You don't have to worry about your needle coming undone, and it just saves on a lot of time as well. After you get those sewn on, you want to go ahead and press them, and I am going to go ahead and press those to the print. If you have a darker background, you might want to press to there. We don't have any seams that are really going to be lining up, so this is one of those instances where we're just going to press to the darker fabric. After you have all of your strips done, so now we're going to have 40 of our 60-inch by 2.5-inch strips. We're going to sew those together into sets of 2. And we're going to just be alternating them. So I'm going to take my white, and it's going to sew to the opposite side of the print. And then the opposite side, we're just going to line it up. And I'm having you pin it and sew it and line it up like this and cut things out, because we really want to eliminate having to trim up or cut off anything on the sides at the end. We want it to be as square as possible before we get there. Now to pin the middle of this, I'm just going to grab both ends and I'm just going to kind of shake them together. And I'm going to fix it because I twisted it. This also helps make sure that you do have it pinned on correctly. Okay, so grab both ends, line them up, and then you can kind of use gravity to get those to lay flat next to each other. Also, you can use your sewing table. So I'm just going to drape this off one end, drape that off the other end, which allows me to kind of get those lined up and make sure that it's straight all the way down the end. Add another pin. Then I'm going to go ahead and just sew both of these strips together all the way down the side. And after that strip is done, we're just going to go ahead and continue making 20 sets of 2 strips. And when I'm putting these together, I'm just trying to kind of mix it up a little bit, get a nice even distribution of the prints. If you have a pack that has a lot of different prints, then you can just kind of grab and pull. If you have one that has some duplicates, just make sure that those duplicates aren't being sewn next to each other. So really quick, as you're sewing your sets of 2 together, we do need to make sure it does matter. It doesn't seem like it should, but it does matter how they get sewn together. So as you're pinning those together, when you have your strip sewn, ironed out, the top right needs to be the colored strip. So that as you stretch it out, the top left is going to be the white. So you want to make sure that that's how they're alternating. And it does matter, because otherwise when you go to lay them out, you won't be able to alternate every other one if they're not sewn together this way. So we want to make sure that when you put your 2 strips together, like I said, when you've got them folded out and ironed, that top right is going to be the color, and then the bottom right will start on the white. So for me, the easiest way to make sure that I do this is to always line it up. Just put the color on the top every time, and then sew that right seam that you're normally going to be sewing. So that's the easiest for me to kind of figure out how to make sure that they're all the same, is just always start with the color on the top. And then if you're sewing that same side, obviously, because on all of them, they're all going to be the same way, and so you'll have what you need for that. All right, after we have all of our strips sewn into sets of 2, remembering that we want the color on the top right, white on the top left, now we're going to go ahead and put those sets together. And this we are going to have to pay a little bit of attention to, because we're going to want to line up the white. So let me just pin the edge real quick. All right, now I'm going to come down here to where I have the 2 white sections are going to end and meet. And how I'm going to line these up is I'm just going to fold it back, and then I can kind of maneuver it a little bit. I'm going to lay this down so it's a little bit easier, but you can see I'm going to maneuver it to make sure that those 2 white sections are lining up right next to each other. Here, I'm just going to come in a little bit closer so you can see what I'm talking about. So I want the 2 whites to line up, but I'm going to make sure that I pin it where those 2 line up. So just one more time to show you, after I've got it pinned, so I've lined them up along the edge and stuck a pin in it, but then like I said, just want to fold it back and just double check when you fold that back a little bit that those two whites are going to be in the same place, and if not, you can kind of move it around a little bit to make sure that they are and pin it there. You can also, if it helps, you can stick a pin, line those up, and then stick a pin right where that seam is, and then you can kind of maneuver the top, you know, to get things where you want, if that helps to keep it lined up. You don't have to do that, but that is one option. And then we're going to go down and repeat that same thing for the opposite side. So let me just pin, hold it there. So I've got it held along the top, but before I get too serious, I'm going to just fold it back and just make sure. See, those ones aren't quite where they're supposed to be, so I'm going to move it a little bit and then make sure that I line them up along the edge again. Double check myself so you can see that those two whites are lining up right where they should. So those are what we want to make sure to line up, the edges and then those two white seams, and then just go ahead and pin the rest of the strip to fill in between. And then we're going to sew all of those strips of 2 in 2 strips of sets of 4. Like the sets of 2, as we're sewing these together, the easiest way to do it so that you're not going to be unpicking or having to move things around later is the same thing. Just make sure that you have on the top left of each of your sets of 4 is going to be a colored strip, and the top left of each set of 4, and that is obviously when I've got them facing you, is white. So if they were facing me, it would be, you know, the top, swap those. But just make sure that on all of your pieces, you have a colored on the top, you know, and then a white on the opposite, that they all match. And then you'll be able to put them all together in any way that you want. Now we're going to go ahead and just lay out our quilt. So now that I've kind of got things moved around and where I want them, when I'm doing this, just to give you a little bit of tips, I'm just looking to distribute the lights and the darks. If I was using a different pack that had prints, I would be doing the same thing. I'd want to be distributing the colors and then the light and the darks so that they're not all in one spot. I'm able to just worry about shades because it's all greens, but those are just kind of what I'm looking for. If you're not sure if you have a good distribution of light and dark, the easiest way to find out is to take a black and white photo on your phone. Also, if you don't have a place to like lay it out, or you're laying it on the floor or something, if you take a picture with your phone, for some reason, I don't know why, but it's easier to see things in a picture, and it makes it easy to find which one you need to change, which one you need to move. So if you're ever in doubt before you start sewing blocks together, just snap a photo with your phone, look at it on the picture, black and white if you're looking for tones, and then that kind of is a really easy way to figure out where you need to move blocks or where one might not quite fit, that you don't tend to see in person quite as well. So now that these are all laid out and where I want them, I'm going to go ahead and sew them together. So I'm going to sew them together in sets of 2. Like I said, so I'll sew these 2 together, then these 2, then these 2, then these 2. Then I'll go ahead and sew the bigger sets together until I'm sewing 2 halves together and the quilt is done. So after we've taken all of the parts and sewn them into 2 halves, and then we've sewn the 2 halves together, and now the quilt top is done and ready for quilting. So on this one, I'm just going to do some fun border type designs, and I'm just going to quilt something different in each of the strips. I might do some straight lines, I'm thinking, in the white, and then some figure 8s or some ribbon candies or some triangles, you know, lots of fun different things, and just mix it up. Feathers, there's a lot of fun designs I can do just in the strips, and just do a different design in each strip. For my quilt, I'm just going to use a light green or a light yellow thread and just use the same color throughout. I'm not going to worry about changing because I like to change the thread the least amount possible, and I found that a light yellow blends into a lot of colors really well. And also, if I am using if I want one thread to match everything, I'm going to match to my lightest fabric. So I'm going to have something that blends in the white, because I found that light thread blends better in dark fabric than dark thread in light fabric. So that's just in my experience. And a lot of the quilts that you see that I'm quilting have white thread in the entire quilt. So if you want to kind of see what that looks like in a finished quilt, you can check out any of the quilts that we've done recently. They are all quilted with just white thread. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Remember, you can find all the information to put this project together in the blog post that's linked below the video. So you can find that information, and don't forget to check out our shop while you're there and find your next modern quilting project. And we'll see you next time.